built to serve.
Back here, first things first, talking some Jameis Winston now. Coming off a 30-interception season. Nick, you're a bit on delay, so I'm going to say it for you. That ain't great. A recent Tampa Bay Times column isn't helping, saying teams, quote, don't like what they see when evaluating Jameis in free agency. Nick, you surprised Winston's market is looking bleak?
Not really. I think Colin Cowherd has it right when he says 3 things in life you don't want to go cheap on. He says toilet paper, very apropos for the Times, transportation, and quarterbacks. And I think people look at Jameis as not only the cheap option, but the unreliable option in that regard. And here's the other thing, Wilds, that is really working against Jameis. Who are the teams that need a quarterback? There's only one team in the league we know needs a quarterback, Miami, but they think they're probably drafting one. The Chargers, we believe, need a quarterback, but they seem to like Tyrod. The Jags, I believe, need a quarterback, but they've got Jenna's BFF, Gardner Minshew. The Broncos assuredly need a quarterback, but John Elway's there, so he probably loves Drew Lock. So what is the market if he wants to be a starting quarterback? There's not a lot of teams right now, Wilds, that actually think they need one.
I totally agree. I want to read a Bruce Arians quote. I've got 2 Bruce Arians quotes. I want to read this one verbatim. This is from the Tampa Bay Times. Bruce Arians describes Jameis's tenure with the Bucs. There's so much good and so much outright terrible. So I think that's your former coach talking. And then when Arians was on with Rich Eisen the other day, there was a little piece of unintentional comedy where he was saying how great of a guy Jameis is. He works so hard, et cetera, et cetera. He says he reached out to some teams. And Rich is like, you did? I know you probably won't tell me what teams. He's like, what was the reaction? And Bruce Arians says, one team was not interested, and one team said, thanks for calling. So, that's it. I don't think the market's that big, and I don't think Bruce Arians is doing a great job selling his guy that he's just a fantastic fit for your team.
Hey, Greg, let me ask you something. It seems like Jameis is as good as he is bad, and that's the problem. When you get excited about his upside, you're brought back down to reality because of his downside. He's kind of like, in my Seinfeld knowledge, he's kind of like Even Steven, but that's not good enough to be a starting quarterback on any of the teams when there aren't that many slots to begin with. Am I right?
Yeah, but I'm shocked that no one has taken a chance on Jameis Winston, because typically when you have a guy who is very talented and who can provide you such a great upside, kind of high risk, high reward, you tend to get coaches that feel like, I can be the coach that fixed that. And so if I'm looking at coaches that could potentially fix it, who have situations, because I don't believe that Jameis Winston, obviously, as Nick put it, is going to go into a situation where he's going to be the outright starter. He's going to have to earn a spot. You can look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys, who have a Mike McCarthy who understands how to work with guys and kind of get them to understand defenses to better suit their ability to be accurate and to have better decision-making processes when having the ball in their hands. Now, I don't think that'll happen, but he has to go to a guy that can bring that out of him. And a lot of people thought that was going to be Bruce Arians, and it wasn't. And I think that's what's really becoming a turnoff for a lot of these NFL teams, the fact that Bruce Arians could not do anything positive with Jameis Winston.
If not Bruce, then who, Nick?
Well, first of all, Greg's point about the Cowboys, I think, is a really interesting one, not only because of the McCarthy angle, but it would be a little, Cold War against Dak. Like, oh, you don't want to sign this $115 million deal. Yeah, a former 4th-round pick. Well, how about we bring in a former number 1 overall pick to back you up? Does that maybe get Dak back to the negotiating table? But the team that I think makes sense, has a need, is used to a quarterback, maybe not being in the best of shape and throwing a bunch of picks. How about the Pittsburgh Steelers? What about sitting behind Ben for a year and then maybe not for a full year if Ben's elbow is not fully recovered? You've got that great defense, Jenna. You have that excellent head coach, Mike Tomlin. You've never had a losing season. They need a backup quarterback because it's not the Duck and it's not Mason Rudolph. So to me, the Pittsburgh as a backup, maybe one day heir apparent, Jenna, for Jameis makes a lot of sense.
I like it.
How about the fact that Jameis...
First Things First is sponsored by Ram Trucks, built to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wildes, Greg Jennings with us. Gentlemen, hope you all had a good weekend. We have a fabulous Monday show for you. Jameis Winston seems to be a man without a plan these days. Nick makes an NBA list that LeBron isn't even on. Wait till you hear that. And Cam Newton is on some kind of mission. That's where we start this morning. Cam, his go-to way of passing the time these days is making declarations on social media. The latest one, well, the former MVP took to Instagram saying, quote, "People love a good underdog story. This ain't that." So, Nick, it's an interesting topic. Do you look at Cam Newton as an underdog?
Well, at this point, given what the entire league has said about his trade value, about his future as a starting quarterback, he almost by default has turned into an underdog. But he, of course, does not look at himself as an underdog. And you have to totally understand why. Cam Newton, his entire life, basically every room he's ever walked into, he's been the most successful person, the most talented person, almost always the best looking person. The last decade, he's also been the most accomplished and the wealthiest person. When that's the normal for you, you don't look at yourself as an underdog. You look at yourself as the overwhelming favorite in all circumstances, especially when you've achieved at the level that Cam has, winning at every level imaginable and coming this close to winning as a pro. It reminded me, Wildes, of LeBron James in his first year back in Cleveland during the playoff run. Even after Kevin Love was out and Kyrie's knee was bothering him, he was asked at a press conference about being an underdog. And he said, "Who, me? Who, an underdog? No." And I think Cam has a similar mentality, Kevin. So I don't expect him to view himself as an underdog, Wildes.
I think he's got a little underdog in him that I'm wondering, are you telling me this or are you telling yourself this? I actually think we're seeing a new chapter of Cam Newton. Less Superman, more Iron Man. The first part of his career, all Superman. And Superman's big thing is he can do it himself. National champion, Heisman, Offensive Rookie of the Year, MVP. Most of the Panthers playbook is like, I don't know, give it to Cam, QB draw. Same as Superman. Superman, there's an asteroid coming to Earth. Like, I got it. I'll just go up and punch it and destroy it. Now I think we're in the Iron Man stage of Cam's career. He's building something. He's in the lab. He's got the metal, what's it called? The metal mask. It comes down, there's sparks flying out. September 27th, in Cam's Instagram, there was the confessional, and he's got the cigar, and he's got the glass of brandy. Okay, that's September 27th. December 12th, he's got the walking boot on. Since then, there's been over 50 posts, all in black and white, and he's trying to get across three things. 1, I'm motivated. 2, I'm working out. 3, I love my family. I think Cam has turned a page. I think he's going to be amazing, and I think the best is yet to come.
Greg, let me ask you a question. Underdog is not necessarily a bad term. We've seen it connected to Tom Brady. The Eagles adopted the underdog mentality. They rode it all the way to the Super Bowl. When you, as a player, hear underdog, do you look at it as a label? Is it a mentality? Is it a negative thing? From a player's perspective, where are you on this?
To answer your question directly, from a player's perspective, you look at it as disrespectful. From a team's perspective, you enjoy being an underdog. Why? Because they're counting you all out. They're saying basically, this team is one that we don't think can accomplish what they believe. And so when you say that to a team, it kind of galvanizes them. It kind of draws them all together to become one. When you say that to an individual, they tend to bark back. And so I agree 100% with what Nick said about Cam himself does not believe he is an underdog. Why? Because he's never been an underdog. He's always been one of the most prolific, talented individuals that step foot on a football field. When it comes to his talent and what he can provide, it's top notch. It has always been top notch. And to now say that he is potentially an underdog, it's a slap in the face to him personally, because he's never not been the guy. And to Wild's point, I think he is entering into a new phase in his life. When you turn 30, when you start to become labeled differently and teams start to count you out, and you feel slightly, I shouldn't even call it a slight disrespect. When you feel disrespect, you start to approach things a little differently. And I think that's Cam's approach in this offseason. And when he goes into the next season, he's going to be lights out.
Well, then everything, Nick, that you guys have all described leads to Cam Newton being an underdog. Teams have sort of stopped believing in him, at least his own team did. There doesn't seem to be a vast market out there for him. He seems like he's kind of angry. Maybe he is an underdog. Has anything you've seen in the last couple of years leading up to where he is right now proven that point?
Well, I think angry is maybe the right word for it, Jenner. Not just angry that the franchise that drafted him, the franchise that he took to their only second Super Bowl appearance ever, he won the only league MVP the franchise has to its name, that they disrespected him in the way and the timing in which they released him. But now that he looks back on it, I think he does believe, man, you guys